Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a first look at the Week 10 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. Going to do like a really quick position by position breakdown. I'm not going to talk about all the guys on the slate at every position. I'm just going to hit on the players, the few players that stand out to me early on in the week. Recording this video on Tuesday afternoon, so obviously these are not my final thoughts or anything. I'll have more content posted throughout the week. I'll have my final look video posted most likely on Friday. But I do want to give, kind of a first look breakdown. As we do go through each position, we will build out a first look lineup. Just kind of, an early look lineup, sort of a dummy lineup that we can put in to contest to just kind of, give us something to start the week with. We'll have to keep updates or keep an eye on injury news throughout the week. There are definitely going to be updates. There's a lot of guys, key guys that, could be questionable, could have a chance of missing this week that we'll have to keep an eye on. So we'll do that. We'll go through each position, talk about all the guys that stand out to me. But before we do, as always, guys, I would appreciate it if you would hit the like button down below. Be sure to click the subscribe button as well. Hit that notification bell or click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, I have stuff available on Patreon that you can check out, link down below. If that does interest you, the Patreon is linked down below in the description. But let's go ahead and take a look at quarterback for this week. So, quarterback is a position I have been paying up at a lot this season. It's like in my main lineup, normally I look to go cheap at quarterback, but I've been paying up a lot this year. Just the quarterbacks at the top have really been on another level. Guys like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, even like Justin Herbert, you could put into that category. Like these guys have shown massive ceilings and pretty high floors as well. Like Kyler Murray, his worst game this year is 24 DK points. He's had multiple games over 40 fantasy points, kind of the same with Russell Wilson. Josh Allen, floor been a little bit lower, but still a guy that has, 35, 40-point ceiling. I'm trying to pay up at quarterback most times, and I think this is definitely going to be a week where I want to pay up again. There really isn't many cheap plays that I have interest in. The one guy that I liked last week for cheap was Drew Lock, and that did work out. But there was really, I like Lock in tournaments, but there was no way that I was going to play him in my main lineup. I just thought the guys at the top were in such good spots. I wanted to try and pay up, so looks like that's going to be the case again this week. I think at the quarterback position, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, I think those are kind of the four guys that stand out to me the most. Kyler Murray against the Bills, you can't really go wrong with Kyler here. Right now, this game has the highest total on the slate. It did open with a 52 total, but since then it's been bet up to 56. Should see a ton of points scored here. Murray's coming off two huge games against Seattle and Miami where he put up over 41 DK points. He's just been so good this season. Gives you just so much upside with his rushing ability. He's kind of been the Lamar Jackson, like what Lamar was last year. That's what Kyler Murray has been this year, even better. He's adding more through the air than Lamar did. But, Kyler gives you 100 rushing yard upside, can get you rushing touchdowns. I'm pretty sure he has a rushing touchdown. Yeah, he's got at least one rushing touchdown in every game but one this season. He's thrown for, 300 yards, like, let's see, he's thrown for over 300 yards twice this season. But even if he only throws for, maybe 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, he can still give you 35 DK points because he can give you, 80, 90, 100 rushing yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. Like, his upside is just through the roof. I like the spot against Buffalo. I like that this game's projected to be high scoring. It is a great spot for Kyler Murray. You can definitely pay up for him this week. Russell Wilson against the Rams, I have no problems with either. Russ is kind of coming off like his first somewhat disappointing game. If you kept watch on that game, Russ was struggling quite a bit. He did have some fumbles. He threw 2 interceptions as well, but he still managed to come through in terms of fantasy points. He did score 29 DK points last week. He's just had such a high floor this season. Very similar to Kyler Murray. Russ's worst game this year was against Miami, where he had 24.9 DK points. Like, even on his bad weeks, you're still getting 23, 25 DraftKings points from Russ, and we know he has that 35, 40-point ceiling. I think Kyler's ceiling is a little bit higher than Russ's at this point, especially because Kyler can add so much on the ground. But Russ is, he's been awesome this year. Can't go wrong with him either. But for me, I think it's definitely that Buffalo-Arizona game I want to attack the most. Kyler at 8K, Josh Allen at 7,500. You really can't go wrong with either guy. I think Josh Allen, though, for the savings, I do like quite a bit. Talked about him in my first look video last week. Talked about him in my final look video. He was one of my favorite plays at quarterback last week, and that did work out. He did have a really good game. 39 DraftKings points, 415 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, Also gave you 14 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. I mean, look, Josh Allen, his floor, like I said, it's been a little bit lower than Kyler's, than Russ. He's definitely not been as consistent as those guys, but his ceiling is still through the roof. This is still a guy that can go out there and put up close to 40 DraftKings points. Doesn't give you the crazy rushing upside that Kyler does. Like, you're not going to get 100 rushing yards from Josh Allen, but he can still add 50, 60 yards on the ground. When they get down to the goal line, they will let Josh Allen punch it in. At 7,500 against Arizona in a high-scoring game, I think Josh Allen looks like a really good play this week. He's one of my favorite, kind of early-look quarterbacks. I think Kyler's a great play as well, but given the savings, we'll take Josh Allen in there, go with him at 7,500. And then on Yahoo, it's kind of the same thing. Pricing's a little bit different. Josh Allen's actually the most expensive quarterback on Yahoo, so probably for that reason, I'd probably rather just save $1, play Russ or play Kyler. But I do want to talk about Justin Herbert on Yahoo. He's only $33. He is much cheaper than a lot of those top guys. And, I mean, Justin Herbert's been, he's not been as good as those top guys, but he's also not priced like them. He's not $38, $39 like Kyler and, Josh Allen are. He's only $33. And since taking over for Tyrod Taylor, since he's become the starter, I mean, he's been about as good as it gets. Over 23 fantasy points in every game but one. He has shown a high ceiling this year as well. Had a really big game against Jacksonville, 38 fantasy points in that game. Now he gets to face Miami, a team I'm not really worried about, a team he should be able to have success against. At $33 on Yahoo, if I can't find the salary to get up to Josh Allen or Russ or Murray, I'm fine taking Justin Herbert at $33. We'll go ahead and plug him into the Yahoo build. He's another guy that I think has just been on another level this year. Pretty much been a starter, in terms of season-long fantasy. Like, you're starting Justin Herbert pretty much every week. He's been almost he's kind of been matchup-proof so far this season. And even on DraftKings at 6,600, I have no problems with him either. If you want to save a little bit of salary and go down to Justin Herbert, you could definitely look to do that. But those are kind of the few guys that stand out to me. I think this is definitely a position I want to try and pay up at this week. I just don't really see much value. Maybe as the week goes on, I'll dive a little bit deeper, but, First looks, I'm not really seeing any cheap plays that I'm in love with. Matthew Stafford against Washington could be fine to go to. Tua against the Chargers, maybe, but nobody that I feel like really, really confident in down here. So let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. Running back usually always a position we are going to want to try and spend up at, and I think that's once again going to be the case this week. Christian McCaffrey, one of the big injuries we will definitely need to keep an eye on throughout the week. It came out that after the game Sunday, I believe it got announced like Monday or something, that McCaffrey did get hurt in Sunday's game towards the end of the game on the last drive, and that he's listed as day-to-day, but they came out and said that his status is very much in doubt. For me, when you come out and say that a guy's status is in doubt, that makes me assume he's most likely not going to play. This is obviously something that we can just monitor throughout the week. We'll be able to we'll get actives and inactives an hour and a half before Sunday's game, so we'll know before lock if McCaffrey's in or out. But I think there's a pretty good chance Christian McCaffrey does not play this week, and we will talk about Mike Davis. He is really, really cheap on both sides. He's going to be the highest owned player on the slate if McCaffrey's out, but I think he's probably a guy you just kind of want to eat the chalk with and move on. We'll talk about him when we get there, but if Christian McCaffrey plays, you can't go wrong with him. Even in his first game back from injury, they said they were going to limit him, but he got 28 touches. He did what Christian McCaffrey does: 18 carries, 10 receptions, got a receiving touchdown, got a rushing touchdown as well, 37 DraftKings points. Like, when Christian McCaffrey's healthy, he's a top running back every week. I will say it is probably the toughest matchup he's had this season. Tampa Bay been really good against the run. McCaffrey did play Tampa Bay earlier this year, had 24 DK points, but this is one of the tougher matchups. Tampa Bay's just been really good defensively overall this year. Albeit, Christian McCaffrey is pretty much matchup proof at this point. But then you got Kamara against the 49ers. Not the best spot either, but we know the usage that Kamara is going to get. Very similar to Christian McCaffrey, going to get probably 12 to 15 carries, going to get a ton of usage in the passing game as well. Now that Mike Thomas is back, that's a little bit of a hit for Alvin Kamara. I don't know if we're going to see him get like 13, 14 targets like he was getting when Thomas was out, but he should still see plenty of usage in the passing game. Another guy that you can pretty much play every week, another guy that's matchup proof, but I like dropping down. We have some guys in really good matchups that are much cheaper. Like Aaron Jones, he's someone that really stands out to me on DraftKings. He's only 7,100, and he's facing the Jaguars. The Jaguars have been a team I've looked to take opposing running backs against this year. I know they've gave up some big games to opposing running backs, specifically Joe Mixon. That was probably one of my best weeks this year was when Joe Mixon played the Jags and he had like 40 fantasy points. I was all over Joe Mixon that week. I'm probably going to be all over Aaron Jones at 7,100 on DK. I just think that's too low of a price tag for him. I know he hasn't been great lately, but this is still a guy that gets big-time usage. He's not going to get 20 carries and 10 targets like Christian McCaffrey and maybe Alvin Kamara will get, but he'll still get 13 to 15 carries, 4 to 5 targets. If they're playing with a lead, they will let Aaron Jones pound the rock. If they're playing from behind, he'll still be used in the passing game. I think Jamal Williams is going to be back for this game. A.J. Dillon probably going to be back as well. So there's going to be, guys in the backfield to replace Aaron Jones if he needs to come off the field. We saw last week in that Thursday night game against the 49ers, like Aaron Jones, they said they were going to limit him, and he got 20 touches in that game. They didn't use him much late in the game just because they didn't really need to, but he's still going to be involved heavily, even with Williams and Dillon, behind him. He's still their number one running back. And at 7,100, since he's so much cheaper than McCaffrey and since he's so much cheaper than Kamara, I like Aaron Jones a lot against the Jaguars. I think this is a really good spot for him. Big-time home favorites. Just kind of all the boxes are checked. His price tag a little bit lower than it should be as well. So really like Aaron Jones. And then, on the other side of that game, I think James Robinson looks really good. 6,600. Green Bay's been a team I've looked to take running backs against this year. I'm pretty sure they've allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season. They're allowing a ton of receptions to running backs as well, and we know James Robinson gets really good usage in the passing game. This is a guy that has the potential to see 20-plus touches, maybe even 25 touches. He got 25 touches last week, but he'll get 18 to 20 carries. He'll get 6 to 8 targets. If they're playing from behind, they'll use Robinson in the passing game. This is probably going to be a game where they are playing from behind, but I'm not too worried about that because, like I said, they use James Robinson a lot in the passing game. I think he's also a really good play at 6,600, but we will talk about some guys that are a bit cheaper that I think look a little bit better than Robinson, but I don't mind him at all on DraftKings. Now, on Yahoo, I think that's where Robinson probably looks the best. If you look at the pricing on Yahoo, Aaron Jones is pretty expensive over there. He's $35. He's more expensive than Kamara. So, I probably won't be getting to Aaron Jones on Yahoo. I think it makes sense to drop down to Robinson, who's only $28. That's where I like him the most. Don't mind him on DraftKings either, but $28 on Yahoo gives you some savings dropping down from McCaffrey, Jones, Kamara, who are all $34 or more, whereas Robinson just coming in at $28. So really like James Robinson this week. I like Aaron Jones as well. Pretty much both running backs in that game I think are really good plays. Then one guy I want to talk about, Chase Edmonds, another player that really stands out to me early on in the week. Without Kenyon Drake last week, Chase Edmonds was heavily involved. I believe he played over 90% of the snaps, got 28 touches. He was not efficient at all, only averaged 2.8 yards per carry, but still he got 25 carries. He got 3 targets, 3 receptions. He gets another good matchup this week at home against Buffalo. Buffalo has been pretty bad against the run this season. This is definitely an attackable matchup, and the price tag came down on Chase Edmonds. He was 6,800 last week, and now he's 6,300 this week. Assuming Kenyon Drake's out again, I'm going to be right back on Chase Edmonds. I know it didn't work out last week, but the volume that he got was insane, and I would expect that to be the case once again this week. And since the price came down, that's just going to make me have even more interest. We talked about how this game has a really high total, how it's likely to shoot out. That's also a positive for Chase Edmonds. And, if you look at Yahoo's pricing, he also got priced down over there, only $22. Assuming Drake does not play, that'll be another big injury we need to watch throughout the week. Assuming Drake's out again, really like me some Chase Edmonds. He's once again going to be most likely a top play for me and probably going to be a guy I build around in my main lineup. He was in my main lineup last week, and if Drake's out again this week, probably will be in my main lineup once again. But then other guys like, there's some other guys you could consider maybe for tournaments like Chris Carson if he plays. Miles Sanders feels a little bit too cheap if he plays. But I would still probably have those guys, kind of behind Chase Edmonds. But then like in the 5K range, really good spot for Leonard Fournette. He's kind of surpassed Ronald Jones. I know Ronald Jones is still the starter and still, was out there on the first drive, but Fournette was more involved than Jones. He played more snaps as well. He only got 1 carry last week against the Saints. He did still get a lot of usage in the passing game. Got 6 targets, 6 receptions for 41 yards. Great matchup here against Carolina. We know Carolina is really bad against the run. Fournette had a monster game against the Panthers earlier this season. 12 carries, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also got 4 catches for 13 yards. Look, if I'm going to target one of the Tampa Bay running backs, I think at this point, Leonard Fournette is the guy that I feel more confident in. So he's the one that I do prefer over Ronald Jones, and I'll probably will be attacking that matchup. I've looked to take running backs against the Panthers pretty much all season, and I'm not going to stop this week. I don't know if I'll be going to like Fournette or Jones in cash games. I just don't think that's the way you want to go because they do still split the work. But I could see one of those guys putting up a really big score just because Carolina's been so bad against the run this year. But the guy we really need to talk about this week is Mike Davis. So, I mentioned it at the beginning. Carolina dealing with injuries here. Christian McCaffrey got hurt last week. They're saying his status is very much in doubt for this week. Right now, I'm going to assume that Christian McCaffrey does not play. This will be something we need to keep an eye on heading throughout the week, heading up to Sunday. I'll be able to touch on this more on Friday in my final look video. But for now, assuming Christian McCaffrey does not play, I think at minimum salary, $4K, Mike Davis is probably going to be, I think he reaches kind of like must-play status. I'm never going to say anyone's a must-play because it's NFL, it's football, things can always go weird, guys can get hurt, just things can go wrong, Nobody's ever a lock to do well, but Mike Davis is damn near close to a lock for me. If McCaffrey's out, there's no way I get away from him at 4K. He's too cheap. He's going to get the usage. We saw earlier this year when Christian McCaffrey was out, Mike Davis was getting massive usage. He started to trend down as McCaffrey came closer to returning week 7 and week 8, and then ultimately in week 9 when McCaffrey did return. We saw Mike Davis start to trend down. Definitely did not perform at the level we had hoped, but weeks like 2 through 6 when McCaffrey was out, Mike Davis was crushing every week, was getting massive usage, playing over 85, 90% of the snaps, getting 13 to 15 carries a game, getting 6 to 8 targets. That's going to be really hard to avoid. In cash games, if Christian McCaffrey's out and you don't play Mike Davis, you're making a big mistake. But in tournaments, he's going to be really popular, assuming CMC doesn't play. I could maybe see pivoting away, but I would still have a lot of exposure in tournaments. Going to be most likely one of the highest projected players, points per dollar wise, and going to be really hard to get away from. So really like Davis. He's also cheap on Yahoo. Not as cheap, he's not minimum salary over there, but still $17 is very cheap for Mike Davis if we assume that Christian McCaffrey does not play. I know it's a tough matchup, but the price tag is what really draws me in here. It's going to be hard to get away from him at that price. But let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. So at the top of the wide receiver position, you got your typical guys that you can play pretty much every week, specifically Davante Adams. I mean, he's been as good as it gets this year. Pretty sure he's had, over 30 Draftkings points in every game, but 2 so far this season. Tampa Bay, that was kind of like an outlier game. The Packers got blown out. Adams didn't play much late in the game. And then Detroit, he got hurt in that game. But other than those two, he's been over 30 Draftkings points in every game so far this season, just getting massive usage, massive volume. I guess my only concern is that, for one, he's $9K. He is very expensive. It's going to be tough to get in Davante Adams. But also, Green Bay is big-time favorites here. They're favored by 14. We could definitely see them playing with a lead a lot in this game. And maybe, they run the ball a little bit more than they normally would. But you can't go wrong with Davante Adams. He's a great play every week. It's just a matter of if you can fit him in. With his price now up to $9K, it is going to be a bit tougher to do so. I think it makes sense to probably save some salary and play some of these guys that have, that also have 30-point ceilings. Specifically, someone like Stefon Diggs. I really like Diggs this week. He correlates well with Josh Allen. At $7,500 on Draftkings and very affordable on Yahoo as well at $26. Diggs looks like one of my favorite pay-up options at receivers, at least early on in the week. He was a guy that I did like a lot last week, and he had a solid game. He wasn't great by any means, but 9 catches for 118 yards on 12 targets, 23.8 DK points. Diggs has just been so consistent this season, getting big-time volume every week, pretty much locked into about double-digit targets every game, been over double-digit DK points in every game as well. He hasn't shown like the 35, 40-point ceiling that a guy like Davante Adams has, but he's also not 9K like Davante Adams is. He's $7,500, he's $1,500 less, and he could easily outscore Adams, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. It is a good matchup against Arizona. It's a high-total game, should be a fast-paced game. We should see a lot of points scored here, and for $7,500, I really like Stefon Diggs. He correlates well with Josh Adams. Josh Allen. I'm definitely going to be looking to stack those two guys up in tournaments, and you can run it back with Chase Edmonds. You could maybe play Hopkins or a guy like Christian Kirk. There's just going to be a lot of viable plays from this game, and Allen to Diggs definitely stands out as one of my favorite kind of quarterback receiver stacks, at least early on in the week. But I mean, Keenan Allen, another guy you can't go wrong with, just continues to produce week in and week out, getting big time volume, double-digit targets in every game that Justin Herbert has started this season, except the one game against New Orleans where he got hurt. That's the only game where he didn't see double-digit targets with Herbert under center. Against Miami, Miami actually has a decent secondary. They have Xavier Howard, they have Byron Jones as well. But those two guys, I believe, mainly play on the outside, and Keenan Allen will kind of move all over the field. They'll play him in the slot a lot. I'm not too worried about the matchup when it comes to a guy like Keenan Allen, who is just going to get massive volume. I mean, he's going to find ways to get open. He pretty much always does. At 7,100, his price tag is coming up. He's not 6,200 like he was a few weeks ago, but I still think Keenan Allen is in play this week. Yahoo's where he looks really good. He's still pretty affordable over there, only $26. I like him quite a bit on Yahoo. It's easier to get him in over there as well, just due to the fact that the pricing is a little bit softer. Plus, we have Justin Herbert in as our first look quarterback on Yahoo. So, stacking up Herbert and Allen, something I definitely will be looking to do. Normally I don't go out of my way to do quarterback receiver stacks like in cash games or in my main lineup, but if it fits, it fits, and I really have no problems with it, especially when it's, two elite quarterback and receiver combos like Herbert Allen, then Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs. Like, you're never going to feel bad stacking those guys up in your main lineup or in cash games. But definitely like Diggs, definitely like Allen. I think those are probably two of my favorite pay-up options early on in the week. I think the Rams receivers look really good this week in Seattle. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. They did get priced up for the matchup. It is one of the best possible matchups you can get. But still, it is a really good spot, so I could see going to those guys in the 6K range. Not much else, though, stands out, though, in the 6K range. Not much, at least early on in the week. Now, going down in price, there are some guys I want to talk about down here in the 5Ks. So Marvin Jones, I liked a lot last week with Kenny Golladay out, and he didn't get a ton of volume, but he did find the end zone. Luckily, 3 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets, 13 DK points. Against Washington, not too bad of a matchup. If Galladay's out again, I think Marvin Jones is fine to go to at 5,200. I like the price tag on DJ Moore. This is someone that I've played a good amount this season. It seems like I've been right on him most weeks. I did play him against New Orleans in Week 7. I think I played him, Week 5 against Atlanta as well. He's been a guy that when I've played him, he's done well. When it comes to playing like Anderson and Moore, the weeks I've played Anderson, it seems that he does better. The weeks I've played Moore, it seems Moore does better. So I feel like this is probably a DJ Moore week for me, specifically because he's, $1,000 less than Robbie Anderson. I know his targets have been, up in the air. He's been incredibly inconsistent this season, but this is still a guy that has a big-time ceiling. He had a really good game against Tampa Bay earlier this year for what that's worth. On 13 targets, got 8 catches for 120 yards, 23 DK points. We talked about it at the beginning of the video. Tampa Bay has a really good defense. They have a good secondary. They've been much better against the pass this year than they were last year. But 5,100, I think, is too cheap of a price tag for a talented receiver like DJ Moore. I like him early on in the week. He's a guy that really does stand out to me on Draftkings, and he looks pretty good on Yahoo as well. His price tag is also down over there. Like, you look at the pricing on Yahoo, Robbie Anderson coming in at $22, whereas DJ Moore is down here at $18. I think I'd probably rather go with DJ Moore in that scenario. I definitely like him as sort of like an early look value, or if you want to consider him a value, I think he is kind of an early look value. And I have no problems playing Moore and Davis together, specifically because Mike Davis is so cheap. We could see a scenario where Davis, puts up 18, 19 DK points, and, Moore also has a good game. It's going to be really hard for Davis to fail at his price. So, I really have no problems playing Moore and Davis together, even without, their quarterback. But really do like DJ Moore this week. I like the price tag. I like that, anytime we get the scenarios where talented receivers get priced down because maybe they've been performing poorly, that's the time when I want to hop on these guys, because I know the upside is still there, and people are going to shy away from a guy like DJ Moore because he's been so bad. But I think the upside's still there, especially in a game where they're probably going to be playing from behind, going to have to throw. Really like DJ Moore at just 5,100. But then values at receiver, tough to find early values early on in the week, or cheap plays early on in the week. We'll have to keep an eye on San Francisco's receivers. I know Deebo Samuel and Kendrick Bourne, Brandon Ayuk were all out last week. Richie James had a massive game with all those guys out. 9 catches, 184 yards, and a touchdown. He did get priced up, but depending on what happens with those receivers, if they're out again, Richie James would definitely be in play at 4K. Josh Reynolds, he's kind of been trending in the right direction, seeing good volume the last 2 weeks, 17 targets over his last 2 games, Only 3,500, gets a matchup this week against Seattle, a really, really bad defense, a team that's really struggled against the pass this season. I believe Seattle has allowed the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks and to opposing wide receivers, so really good spot for these Rams receivers. 3,500 for Josh Reynolds, like he's definitely a value play we could look to. But let's go back up to the 5K range. I think there are some guys I do want to talk about here. We already mentioned a guy like DJ Moore at 5,100. If you go up in price, you got guys like, or it looks like Brandon Ayuk is going to play this week, so that kind of takes me off Kendrick Bourne. He's not questionable anymore, but you have like Antonio Brown, 5,800. 5,800 for Antonio Brown feels really low. Wasn't targeted heavily in his first game. Just 5 targets, 3 catches for 31 yards. But that was kind of like just a terrible game overall for the Bucks. They only put up 3 points. Brady only had like 200 passing yards, had 3 interceptions. 5,800, I'd be willing to go to Antonio Brown in tournaments. I think he's someone we could look to as a GPP play. Kenny Golladay is someone I'm very interested in, depending on what happens with his status. He was out last week. We don't really have any updates. It's too early on in the week to tell anything, but assuming Kenny Golladay plays this week, for 5,900, I like him quite a bit. I think his price tag is just too low. When this guy's healthy, he's been incredibly consistent this season. I'm not really going to count the game against the Colts because he did get hurt in that game. That's why he finished with 0 DK points. But you take out the Colts game, 20, 17, 16, 17 DK points. Like Golladay has been incredibly consistent when healthy. Matchup at home against Washington, I'm not too worried about. Matthew Stafford is going to find a way to get Kenny Golladay the ball. Kenny Golladay, their number one receiver. He's been really good when he's healthy this year, and assuming he plays this week, I like him a lot at 5,900. This will be an injury we need to keep an eye on, but I assume Golladay does play. I thought there was a chance he maybe could have played last week. He ultimately did not, but anytime we get those scenarios where guys are out, maybe with like a minor injury, it makes me assume that they'll be back the next week. So I'm assuming Golladay will be back Sunday, and if he is, 5,900 is too low of a price tag. So I do like him a lot on DraftKings at that price tag. I think on Yahoo, he's appropriately priced there. He's $26. Probably won't be getting to him on Yahoo. Like I'd rather play Diggs, I'd rather play Allen. But DraftKings 5,900. Sign me up for some Kenny Golladay at that cheap price tag. But for our last 2 spots, tight end and defense, we don't have much salary to work with, but these are always positions I can look to go cheap at. Tight end and defense, we can always find cheap plays. So let's go ahead and start off with defense. I don't really spend too much time on defense, just kind of look for a cheap home defense and a good spot. Green Bay at home against Jacksonville, I think is fine to play. We're talking about Yahoo pricing, they're only $12, but since we do have James Robinson, probably don't want to plug in the Packers defense, but at $13, either the Raiders or the Saints, I think probably my 2 favorites just in terms of early look values. Saints defense looked really good last Thursday against the Bucks. Now they get to face a backup quarterback in Nick Mullins. Get to face a 49ers team that's missing a lot of key weapons. Deebo Samuel might be out this week. We know George Kittle's still going to be out. At $13, I'm fine plugging in the Saints defense as sort of our kind of value D on DraftKings. Now on Yahoo. Now on DraftKings, it's going to be tougher to get the Saints D since we only have 3,300 remaining per player. So we'll have to go a little bit cheaper. The Raiders were the other team I mentioned. They're also $13 on Yahoo, but on DraftKings they're only $2,500. At home against Denver, Drew Lock, he had a big game last week, but this is still a guy that will turn the ball over, will force sacks, is definitely a guy that will make mistakes, and the Raiders are at home. They're really cheap. I'm fine plugging them in as our first look defense. So that leaves us 4,100 left for tight end. We got some guys here that are definitely playable. I will say tight end is a position there's no way I'm paying up at tight end this week, especially because Kittle's out and not going to be, not a guy we could play. And then Travis Kelce's off the main slate as well. So with no Kelce, with no Kittle, I just don't really see the need to pay up. I think we can definitely save salary here. There's guys that are cheap that, can still give us good scores at their price tags, like Hunter Henry. I know he's been bad this year. He hasn't been great, but this is still a guy that's going to get probably 6 to 8 targets, is going to get looks in the red zone, can easily give you 14, 15 DK points if he does find the end zone. At 4,100, you could play him. Austin Hooper, I like a lot, assuming he's able to play this week. It looks like he's already been, they've already said that he's going to play this week against the Texans. So Austin Hooper is expected back, and for 3,900, I like him quite a bit, especially because Odell's out for the season. Hooper's kind of been trending in the right direction, really before the injury. He was getting the looks, 14, 10 DK points, was scoring consistently, 7, 10, 6 targets. He's going to be probably one of their top pass catchers the rest of the season since, Odell's out. Landry hasn't been that great this season. Like, I think Hooper's going to get plenty of volume, 6 to 8 targets most likely every week. He's only 3,900. I like him quite a bit against Houston. Houston's not a team where we should be worried about defensively, so Austin Hooper we can plug in as our tight end to fill out our first look build. And if we go over to Yahoo, we have $17 left. Austin Hooper also fits into the Yahoo build, so we'll go ahead and plug him in there. You know, you could always go with like Noah Fant or Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's someone I've played a lot this year, but really like Austin Hooper. I think he's a really good value tight end, assuming that he's fully healthy, which looks like he's going to be. It looks like he is going to play this week, so that's the first look build. The first look, just kind of early look guys I like on Yahoo and on Draftkings, just some guys that stand out to me early on in the week. Like I said, I'm recording this video on Tuesday, so these are my first looks, guys. I'll have more content throughout the week. I'll have my final look video posted on Friday, talking about all my favorite plays at each position. I'll give you my early core of 5 plays, and if you want to get my full updated core plays, those will be posted on Patreon Sunday morning. You can check out the Patreon link down below in the description if you are interested. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will see you in the next one, guys. Good luck this week. Peace.